What's happening, everybody? Greg Ehrenberg here from Stochastic with my dear friend who's back in flannel, Neil Orfield. Has it gotten a little cooler at night, Neil? Is that what's
little
going
bit
on?
cool, a little bit cool today. It was probably too cool to be wearing what the t-shirt I was wearing earlier. I just didn't realize at the time that it was not going to be a nice day. So eventually I was kind of chilly and I decided I better put on my flannel.
Yeah, I was very excited when I saw you in the flannel. It's like, this is a flashback
I'm
to
back.
the golden days when we had more than one game slates of two
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Oh, that
But
was a
Neil,
beautiful
and
time.
yeah, everything is Neil today. We got the XFL hat with the Brahmas colors back. We've got flannel on Neil. So this is good. This should set up for a good show, especially because we have a new sponsor today, Sleeper. If you guys have been playing fantasy football for a while, I assume you're probably familiar with the Sleeper app. And now they also have pick'em contests over there. So for the longest time, this is just a fantasy football platform. But now, Sleeper, you could play pick'em stuff over there. So there's props that you could play. When you sign up for the first time using the link that we have below, get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And listen to this, Neil. Some of the payouts on their pick'em contests, up to 100x. The
Wow.
highest anywhere,
You don't see that anywhere.
100x. So I don't know if you know how much 100x is, but if you win 100x and you did, let's say, you put down $100, 100x. You know how much money that is?
No idea. Couldn't possibly do that calculation.
All right. Let me pull out the calculator, kind of like before when I was trying to do the math on our show. So listen to this. $100. And if you win on one of these, 10,000 according to my mathematics. Pretty good stuff. So you guys want to go check out the Sleeper app. They've got these new pick'em stuff. Go check it out. $100 bonus also when you sign up using our link. So go use that link, sign up, throw down $100. They're going to match it 100, and you get access to those 100x payouts that they have going on over at Sleeper. Now for today, we also have the Eastern Conference Finals Game 2 between the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat. If you guys have any questions for us, just throw them into the YouTube chat, throw them into Discord. If you have super chats, throw those in. I have a feeling we're going to be able to get to a lot of your guys' questions today, and a little bit of a different game one than what we were expecting. I was not anticipating the Heat winning game one, and the Celtics were up. What were they up like 11 at halftime in that game? Kind of fell apart in the third quarter. Neil, who are you picking to win game two?
Yeah, I mean, I got to pick Boston. They are the 9-point favorites. I might take the points with Miami though. Like 9-point spread seems like too much to me. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I listened to the show this morning with Laffy and Josh, and they were thinking that the points, they might take the points there. I don't know though. I feel like Boston just has an ability to stick in games, keep it competitive. So maybe I'm totally off here. And I mean, Vegas knows better than I do what the point total should be, but I might consider taking the points there.
Yeah, I was one of my friends called me and asked me about it before as well. And we were talking about it a little bit. And I tend to think the line is about fair. If I had to take a side, it would be Miami with the points because it is a fairly wide spread, but it's not one that I really feel particularly great about. Here's what's really hard. The Miami kind of sucked in the regular season. And I know they've been much better in the playoffs, but it's always hard when I'm looking because I'm a data guy, right? Like how much am I supposed to ignore everything that happened in the regular season and just look at the last handful of games of Miami Heat played? Let me pull up. Do you remember what the record was in the regular season?
Miami,
Yeah.
55-27. No idea. This is a guess.
Let's see. I'm fairly sure they were below 500.
Were they really?
Or they were at least, or maybe not below 500. They were close to 500. Let's see.
All right. I forget what the Eastern Conference looks like.
Yeah. So the Miami Heat, Miami were 44-38 in the regular season. And then the Celtics on the other side had the second best record in the Eastern Conference. So it's one of those things, right? Like, how much are we going to look into the regular season numbers and how much are we just going to throw those in the trash and just look at the Heat in the playoffs, which, I mean, you're only looking at a handful of games. It's not that many. So it becomes a sample size issue. It's hard to know the actual talent of these teams, but at least how the game is priced based on the sports books and the market is considering the regular season outcomes much more indicative of how good these teams are than the playoffs. So whatever you guys want to make of it, that is at least how the sports books are viewing this game and the series as a whole. So we still have as well the series price. Let's see, what is it after game one? So after game one, we now have the Celtics minus 220 to win the series. So still, fairly significant favorites. Here's a bet that I like a lot, Neil.
Let's hear it.
If the Celtics are to win the series, how likely do you think it is that Jason Tatum is the MVP?
If the Celtics win the series,
Yeah.
like 85% chance.
I'm with you. He's clearly the best player on the Celtics. And here's something that it's just such a big gap. And I talked about it the other day before game one. It still holds true. The Celtics are minus 220 to win the series. Jason Tatum is minus 125 right now to win the Eastern Conference MVP. That's a really big gap between those two numbers. If the Celtics win, I think Tatum's probably the MVP. So there's the bet that I'm going to give to you guys heading into this right now. Jason Tatum minus 125 to win the MVP. I think that's a good bet if we're considering the Celtics as most likely scenario where they win is Jason Tatum is MVP. And that's what I think is going to happen if they end up winning. Doesn't mean I'm totally writing the Heat off in this series, but I do think the most likely scenario is the Celtics win. And then we have Jason Tatum as the MVP there. So a little bit of a just interlude to the game, just a little bit of a background before we get into it. And I do think we should do some of these updates on the series as we go and talk about them, particularly because the DFS contests are going to be fairly similar on a game-to-game basis. Every once in a while, stuff will change. Like Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum are fairly close in price today on DraftKings, which I think is where we should start. If you're picking between the two of them, Neil, and it could be anything, the utility spot, the captain spot. We'll start by talking about DraftKings. Although I guess this does apply to FanDuel as well because it's kind of a similar situation across the two. So on both, Jason Tatum's a little bit more expensive than Jimmy Butler. If you're picking between the two of them, which is your preference for tonight?
Probably Tatum in general, I would say. Coming in, just he's less expensive than Butler and only slightly more ownership. So I think just because the ownership gap isn't that wide, and I think Tatum is likelier to put up a big score, he projects better than Butler, and he's less expensive. Given the lack of a big discrepancy in terms of ownership, probably Tatum, at least in the flex spot. But then I look at the captain spot and I'm like, I'm questioning it a little bit because we have Butler at 16% in the captain spot, Tatum at 29%. So it's a little bit closer when you're talking about who you're captaining, but in the util, it's Tatum by far for me.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at that captain spot, and let me refresh your ownership to make sure I'm looking at the most recent run here. By the way, if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yeah, like you said, we've got Tatum right now projected for 28.7% ownership in the captain spot, 15.6% going to Jimmy Butler. And then over on FanDuel, it's Jason Tatum, 38.6% MVP ownership, and then 37.2% for Jimmy Butler. So I agree with you on the DraftKings standpoint. If you're looking at just the captain spot, I don't think that Jason Tatum should have 2x the ownership of Jimmy Butler in the captain spot. But then at the same time, I don't think they should have the exact same MVP ownership on FanDuel where there's no salary multiplier. It's just who scores more fantasy points. More often than not, that is going to be Jason Tatum to me. So the MVP on FanDuel, would you be rolling with Tatum or Butler over on FanDuel?
Yeah, I mean, you do get 3 points per steal on FanDuel, so maybe it's a little bit closer, but I think it's still got to be Tatum.
Yep, same page for me there. And I think that is definitely the spot where makes most sense to start. And that's why we kicked it off there. I'm going to check our Discord channel to see if we have any questions that have come in. Not quite yet. If you guys have any of those, just at me and we'll answer them over the course of the show. Also, shout out to Jamie Moore. Jamie has just joined as a YouTube subscriber. So welcome to the green team, Jamie.
The green team.
Well, because it's the people you're
green as soon as as soon as you remember. Okay. Green. I've never heard it. The green team. I like it.
I was just trying to think of something to say, and that's what made most sense.
That was on the fly, man. Impressive.
Yeah, really super creative stuff. When because also you look in the YouTube chat, people's names are green. You don't want to segregate people or anything like that, but there's
but you kind of do between some members and non-members.
Yeah, there's the green people and there's the white people in YouTube chat, and it's segregated. That's how it goes.
Of course.
Any other questions coming in? Not quite yet, but let's talk more about the captain. And if you're running a lineup and you're just looking for the highest projected lineup, it is ultimately going to be in our projections, Jason Tatum as the captain. Neil, if you're looking to save salary, and we'll make this ownership agnostic, we'll just say, who do you think is the best cheap option from a value standpoint? And then we'll talk about some contrarian options. So if you're looking to save money at the captain, who's the one you think is the best points per dollar cheap multiplier for DK?
I mean, it's got to be Robert Williams at 6,900 in the captain spot. Now that we know that he's starting, I'd say that he's pretty clearly the top in terms of value. I mean, we do have I guess Cody Zeller is we've got him projected as the actual best value, but I'd be more comfortable playing Robert Williams there. So I think I'd go Robert Williams.
Yeah, and that's also why when I'm looking at some of the projections, I agree with you. I think that overall Zeller's a good value play, but when we're looking for a little bit more ceiling in the captain spot, I would be going to Robert Williams instead of Cody Zeller. I know some people in the chat were asking about it before. We do have Robert Williams confirmed as the starter for today. So Robert Williams is going to be in that starting lineup. The starters for the Celtics are, just to read it off one more time, it is Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Robert Williams. It was what I was expecting, but there was definitely an opportunity, I thought, potentially for them to maybe change it. We do see teams occasionally overreact to losses in the playoffs, so I thought there was a chance that we're going to see something change. Didn't end up being the case. Robert Williams is confirmed as the starter. I'm happy about that. I bet him for over 6.5 rebounds earlier in the day, so we could feel good about that. By the way, we've got some super chats that are rolling in now, so we'll start to answer some of those. Although first, a message from Lee B. Calicor in our Discord channel at Ehrenberg Greg. Why are you the way you are? I just am. I can't help it. I can't help. So the other thing too is I was talking about this briefly with Jordan before the show started. These shows for me, I do this every single night. They get over the course of the playoffs for the 1-game slates. I hate the Eastern and Western Conference Finals because it does get very tedious for me. If these series go 7 games, I have to talk about the same game and more or less the same prices, the same ownerships 7 times every other day. It becomes very repetitive. I have to sometimes, mix it up and bring nonsense.
What did you do that upset B. Calicor?
I think it was about me segregating the YouTube channel.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's fair.
Yeah. It was a reasonable comment for him.
Yeah.
But once again, it's anything. It's for my entertainment. I was able to knock 45 seconds.
That's true.
Off of the hour show.
You made me feel uncomfortable. It was great.
Yes. And I get to talk about something that isn't the exact same players and all the exact same situations we talked about 2 days ago. Super chat from Marcus Morrissey. Higher DK projection, Derek White or Caleb Martin? I prefer Derek White if it's just a 1v1 scenario.
I mean, the higher projection is Caleb Martin, but I don't really have. We have Derek White at, I guess that's 0.7% captain ownership. Caleb Martin 2.1%. I mean, if you're just asking for the projection, it's Caleb Martin, but it's he's got two fantasy points better than Derek White. There might be higher upside there with Derek White.
Yeah, but that should be fair. I didn't really answer the question as he asked it. The higher projection we have is on Caleb Martin. I view Derek White as being the player with a little bit more upside. I know his minutes have dwindled a little bit in recent games. Last game he played 21 minutes. The game before he played 12. Part of that is he's no longer starting, and Malcolm Brogdon has far surpassed Derek White in the rotation. But I do think that Derek White has a little bit more upside than Caleb Martin does. And there's also a chance if Derek White's hitting his shots and he's having a good game, there's opportunity for him to close. Like I don't think Caleb Martin, I don't really see a scenario where Caleb Martin ends up playing, like 34 minutes or anything like that. Now he did play 30 minutes in game 1. He shot 6 of 11 from the field. So maybe I'm short selling him a little bit, but I do view there being a little bit more upside in Derek White, and he's considerably less popular.
You got to think if they get behind in the first half, like if things don't go well for the Celtics in the first half, they got to switch something up, right? Like they decided to start Time Lord in game 1, and then they lost game 1 in a game that they clearly should have won. At some point, they're going to have to switch up what they're doing, and that might benefit Derek White.
Yeah, so we'll see. Like I said, neither one of them are priority plays for me. Just based on the ownership, I do prefer Derek White a little bit there. Super chat from Zion Zenith. Zion says, keep up the great work, fam. Is Highsmith getting minutes tonight? Is Haywood Highsmith getting minutes tonight? So if we go to game 1, Haywood Highsmith did not play. He's not played at all recently. And my inclination is to say, unless this is a blowout, which is possible, we're going to talk about some of those possible scenarios. Celtics nearly 10-point favorites in this game. Who could benefit if it ends up being a blowout? But if this game plays competitively, I do not expect Haywood Highsmith to get minutes.
Agreed. I think that it would happen potentially in a blowout, but otherwise I don't really think they're going to. I don't think Haywood Highsmith is who they're bringing in if they're not doing well early.
I tend to agree. Blowout is on the table, though. Blowout is on the table. Next super chat is from 3, Windy 1, City 2. Will $1,000 player make the optimal lineup for a third day in a row? Yeah, we did see last night the good old somebody makes the optimal lineup scoring 0 fantasy points. That is what ended up happening last night. Can you see that happening again today, Neil?
Um, let me check. I don't. I really hope it doesn't happen again. I guess we got Cody Zeller. We actually have Cody Zeller projected to score fantasy points. It would be better if it's a $1,000 player who actually puts up at least 8 fantasy point to separate from all of the other $1,000 players. But my guess, if I had to guess, I'm going to say no. I'm getting a ton of Cody Zeller in my crunches, though.
I'm going to say yes. Here's why I'm going to say yes. Cody Zeller is very popular today, projected to be very popular, and he's a min-price player who's actually in the rotation, and he's a decent fantasy producer. So considering Cody Zeller's projected for 34% ownership in the utility spot, 1% captain ownership, a third of the field is playing Cody Zeller today. I think there's a path for him to be optimal. Another part of this as well is this game has nearly a double-digit spread. This is one of the more live blowout games we've seen in the playoffs. That's another scenario. So gun to my head, I'm going to say yes. A 1K player lands in the optimal lineup, Cody Zeller being the most likely one.
And I wouldn't hate it as long as it's somebody who actually scores fantasy points. I just hate it when it's somebody who doesn't. So then everybody who has just those 5 players right, but gets a 0, they all win.
And the other thing too about like a slate like yesterday, what's kind of tricky about it is there was no 1K players that were expecting to be in the rotation. Now, ultimately, that ended up being the case, but still, somebody ends up being optimal, scoring 0 fantasy points. For today, there's somebody who's actually going to be in the rotation that's 1K. So it's hard for me to see, Neil, a scenario where there's a 1K player in the optimal lineup with a 0, unless Cody Zeller ends up falling out of the rotation, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yep. Agreed.
DraftKings favorite single entry captain on DK and thoughts on Duncan Robinson as a punt. So let's address this part by part in terms of the question. First, who's our favorite single entry captain? If you're building one lineup for a single entry tournament, Neil, who would you go to as your captain?
It's a very good question. I mean, Tatum is going to get so much steam that I'm a little bit afraid to go there as my captain. Let's see, who are we going to at low ownership? I mean, we've got maybe Bam at 9.2% projected captain ownership. He's only 13,500. You're saving a good amount of salary by going to Bam. Still has pretty good upside. I don't know that I call him my favorite, but Bam is somebody I would consider in a single entry. Like, you still want high upside. What do you think? Do you have a favorite?
Yep, Time Lord. Also my favorite. So he's not popular, but he's not really contrarian either. He's the like the 6th most popular projected captain for us if I just sort by captain ownership.
Yeah, I guess that shocks me that we only have him at 8% captain ownership. I didn't even look at it because I was just assuming the Time Lord was going to be pretty popular there. I like that answer.
Yeah, so if I sort by captain ownership, the most popular is Tatum, second most popular, Jimmy Butler, Jaylen Brown, Malcolm Brogdon, Bam Adebayo, Marcus Smart, and Time Lord Robert Williams. So Williams is the 7th most popular captain that we've projected today. He also just gives you a different build. He is $4,600 in the utility. So, in the captain spot, he is 6,900, I believe. Yeah, that's right. So with that in mind, he's just giving you a different build. You're saving salary. It's letting you get up to the studs in the lineup. He's not overly popular. All of that being considered, Time Lord would be the captain I would select for single entry.
Yeah, I like that call.
And then the other part of his question, thoughts on Duncan Robinson as a punt. Hard for me to get there. He's 3,400. There are players that are cheaper that project better, and I don't think Duncan Robinson is guaranteed to be in the rotation.
I agree. I don't hate it. He just played 7 minutes the last game. It's not my favorite punt in the world. But what is the owner? I mean, if the ownership is low enough, I still might. We've got about 0% captain ownership. What do we have in Utah? We've got Duncan Robinson 1.4%. It's a single game slate. I think Duncan Robinson, if he makes a couple threes at 3,400, wouldn't be that shocking to see Duncan Robinson outscore Cody Zeller. And who else is he really competing against here? Grant Williams, just looking at the cheaper guys. He might be the cheapest player to actually put up points. He could make 3 threes in a rotation. He could play 10 minutes, make 3 threes, something like that. At 1% ownership, I think I don't hate it. In a 150 set, I would have some Duncan Robinson. I'm not sure that I'm going there myself, but I don't entirely hate it.
Yeah, so I'm going to say if he's playing one lineup, I wouldn't have Duncan Robinson. And if
Agreed.
you're building
Yeah.
out a bunch of lineups and he's just in your player pool, I agree with you. I don't hate it. He's just not a priority for me. If you're
Yeah.
playing one, like how many lineups would you, here's a good way to answer it.
Yeah.
How many lineups would you have to play before you got to one with Duncan Robinson, do you think? Would it be 3, 20, 50?
I'd say 50 is right around the right number for me.
Yeah, that's the reason that I threw that in there is that's the number I had in my mind as well. So that's what we'll go with. Depends how many lineups you're playing. If you're just playing one, don't have Duncan Robinson in that.
Yep.
The next question we have here is from Miss Click Genius. If it's a blowout, do you really want Zeller? That's the wrong 1K guy for a blowout build. I disagree. Well, the other thing too is like I don't know that it's going to be a blowout. It's very hard to definitively say the game is going to blow out, but he's part of the rotation either way. He could potentially play garbage time. If the game is a blowout, I wouldn't hate that I had Cody Zeller in that lineup.
Do you think that Cody Zeller would get blowout run?
Potentially. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let me look at.
I mean, he's only been playing 9 minutes a game, something like that. Like, it's not like he's getting crazy minutes. So it's not like he's a part of the rotation that they're like, we can't have him play in garbage time because we need to keep him fresh. I mean, he's played 9, 9, 9, 8 the past 4 games.
So for what it's worth, the last time he was in a game that was a blowout, he played 12 minutes and did get some garbage time run.
Okay. That's a good indicator.
By the way, he looks so ridiculous in that mask, but it's very on brand for him. Does he have to wear that?
No idea. I assume so. I assume it's like he had did he break his cheekbone or something, or his nose, or
like 2 years ago, and then he just never took the mask off. Like, I'm wondering if it's a
he's had it this whole time. I did not realize that he's had it for 2 years.
Yeah, because he doesn't really play. But it's this thing. I almost wonder if there's a mask company who's like, hey, ugly white guy, this will be like on brand.
This is your look now.
Ridiculous mask.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a sponsorship.
It could be.
I hope it is, because that would kind of be funny.
That would be amazing.
He's sponsored by face cards. All right. What else do we have in here? Einsteinium. Thoughts on Brogdon as a captain on DK tonight? Interesting, right? Because he played 37 minutes last game, which is a massive amount of playing time. Here's the issue I have with Brogdon as a captain. He's the 4th most popular captain on the slate. I understand why. I think he's a very, very good points per dollar, but one of the best points per dollar plays on the entire slate. If you tell me that you could just play one player in the mid-range, I would tell you Malcolm Brogdon is your guy, but I don't know he's guaranteed to play 37 minutes again. I'm overweight to the field on him in the utility spot. Captain spot, though, I don't know that I want 10% of him building out a bunch of lineups. So I think he's a little bit too popular as a captain. I like him overall as a value play, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he is a good captain play, but just be aware that he's not like, you're not being contrarian going to Malcolm Brogdon. The field is getting there too, but it is, I mean, a lot less than what Tatum is getting. Man, it's hard for me to take this is my first time doing a show on a single game slate, a solo slate, and it's harder for me to take hard stance because I'm like, it's a single game, you can play anybody. But it's like, it's different than football too, that it's like projectable. It's these are tougher questions. It's like, do I like him? I feel like the field's got it about right around 10%. I think I'm probably gonna be right about where the field is. So no hard stance for me.
So here's how I answer a lot of these, because it's very rare if you're building out a full set of lineups that you have like 0% of anybody significant. So the way that I have been doing these shows, I have my lineups built out, and then it's relative to, am I over or underweight to the players people are asking me about?
Okay, I think that's good.
That's how I answer the questions, because there's going to be no scenario where like somebody's asking, what do you think of Jason Tatum as a captain? I'm not going to have 0 Tatum. I'm not going to have 100% either. So it's all
right,
relative to what the ownership is. That's how I approach these.
Yeah, that's a good approach.
Let's see. We got some more questions coming in via the super chats. So Jordan Klein sent these in, and we've got one here from Andrew Black. Andrew wants to know how to feel about the mid-range players between Lowry and Martin. So let's see. What is that price range? Lowry is 6,400. Caleb Martin is 5,000. So the players that encapsulates are
Caleb Martin,
Kyle Lowry, Max Strus, Malcolm Brogdon, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin. Of those players, my 2 favorites by far are Malcolm Brogdon and Oh, no. So Malcolm Brogdon, number one, definitely my favorite.
Yep.
Second favorite. Let's see. Relative to ownership, who am I overweight to the most there? So we've also got, so nobody in this range other than Brogdon is actually all that popular. We've got so Robert Williams is cheaper, actually. So Brogdon projected for 56% ownership overall. Martin's at 30%. Vincent's at 29%. Lowry's at 28%. If I'm going contrarian, my favorite in this range is Lowry. We've seen with an actual upside in the playoffs, he's inconsistent, but for the ceiling, I think it's Lowry. So best overall points per dollar play, Brogdon. Favorite contrarian option, Lowry. Do you have any other takes from this price range, Neil?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it's Brogdon pretty clearly number one of that price range. The player I'm getting the second most there is Caleb Martin, and then not getting to a ton of Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, a little bit of Kyle Lowry, but I actually have Caleb Martin number two in terms of what I'm getting to.
Yeah, and then by the way, because I see Jerome Brown in the chat asked, and I saw a couple other people ask about Malcolm Brogdon. Just reiterate because I read it off before. Brogdon is projected for 9.7% ownership in the captain spot. That is his ownership there. The next question here is from, another one from Andrew Black. He wants to know thoughts on Grant. So I assume he means Grant Williams. Boy, people, no matter what I say about Grant Williams, people always get down on me. I mean, I'm generally anti Grant Williams. I don't think he's a good fantasy producer, but he played 0 minutes last game. It's hard for me to expect. People always want to click on Grant Williams and they're always expecting him to have some, like big game or something like that. It's so hard. He's not, especially because he's not min price. I think the path to him here is going to have to be the game's a blowout and he gets garbage time run, or the Celtics just mix up the rotation and throw him in. The most likely scenario to me, though, is that Grant Williams plays 0 minutes again.
Yeah, if I had to bet on a minutes number, I would guess 0 as the most likely. It does seem like they could use him. Maybe they decide to change things up after losing the last game. I think a lot of it comes down to like, how does the first half go? I feel like it's going to determine how the second half goes. Because if they are not doing well in the first half, Miami is once again beating them in the first half. I think it's a lot more likely that we see Grant Williams than in the second half. We see Derek White get more minutes, etc. But I could see scenarios where he gets onto the court. Obviously, I'm sure you feel the same way. But I do agree that like the most likely scenario is he just doesn't get on the court.
And I don't really like to take crazy chances on players that I expect to play 0 minutes unless there's like a specific path. Like if you're building a lineup under the game flow that the game is going to be a blowout, okay, but I'm not going to just go, click on somebody in one single lineup who played 0 minutes last game unless we have some sort of news speak from the coach where just like, this guy's going to be in the rotation. Somebody played 0 minutes last game, same series. I tend to think he plays 0 minutes again.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, he had been playing in the Philadelphia series, but even in that one, the last two games he played 3 and 8 minutes. So it's not like he was like a huge part of the rotation. And that was 3 minutes in a big blowout in the last game against Philadelphia. So it does seem like we're it's really just wishful thinking. We're wish casting when we're saying that Grant Williams is going to play, double-digit minutes. So I think that's a good call. It is a single game slate, so like I'm okay with taking more risk in a single game slate, obviously. But again, yeah, as we talk about, similar to like what we were talking about before, with how many lineups would it be before I got to a Grant Williams? I feel like the answer is probably closer to like probably actually close, like right around 50 before I want to play a Grant Williams lineup.
It would be 150 for me. I'd have to be playing a 150 set lineup, and I'm just mixing in a handful of lineups that are under the game script of it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
Or else probably not going to go there. But yeah, it's funny. Every single day, people always want to click on Grant Williams. People really, part of it too is I think just because he was so good in the playoffs last year at times, he had a big ceiling, which was also partially because of, the injury to Robert Williams at one point. But yeah, it just seems like he's a lesser part of the Boston Celtics this year.
Yeah, it feels
Next question.
Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it be before the last game. I think you could have made a case for like maybe this is a series where they want Grant Williams' defense. Like they could use him in this series. Now we have another game sample size in this series where they're saying, no, we don't want, like Grant Williams is not part of our plan. So I think with that additional information, there's extra warts on the play after we saw how the last game went.
Basti G is asking us contrarian captains, if not playing Tatum at captain, and utility most exposed on DK. So my favorite contrarian captain, if we're calling him contrarian, is Robert Williams at 7.6% projected ownership. Is there anybody that you really like? Not like somebody you're willing to take a dart throw on. Is there anybody you legitimately like that's projected for? Well, I guess just by default below Robert Williams, because once you get underneath Robert Williams, nobody's really projected for ownership. He's at 7.6%. The next most popular after him is Kyle Lowry at 2.5%. So is there anybody projected for less ownership than Time Lord at the captain spot? Do you actually really, really do like getting to for any reason?
I don't know that I'd say that I really, really, really like getting there, but I am getting to some Derek White. I am taking shots on. That's a change they could make, is to actually give Derek White more run. We've got him at under 1% ownership. I can't, no. So I guess the answer is no. There's nobody that I really, really, really like below Robert Williams and his 7.6% captain ownership. Probably the next in line for me though is Derek White, just because under 1% ownership for a player who I do think has upside in minutes. And then if the minutes are there, then in his production as well. I think that he's an okay option, but not somebody that I can like strongly recommend.
By default for me, the answer is going to be Al Horford. Of all the players who are starting that we're expecting to play big minutes, Horford's the only one projected for no ownership. 1% ownership going to Al Horford. If you really want to get contrarian, I think he's the one that makes the most sense at 1% ownership. He's starting. We know he's probably going to play pretty big minutes. So that's him at 1%. But once again, super, super contrarian play. If you want to be a little more reasonable in terms of points per dollar play, it's Time Lord at 7.6% ownership. The next question we have here is from Jay. Jay wants to know, what is the highest projected lineup with Tatum at captain and then Smart and Brogdon at utility? Let's see. So I have to build a lineup.
I've got it in front of me. I've got
all right. That was quick.
Tatum at captain, Jimmy Butler, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, Cody Zeller.
There we go.
And that's leaving 1,000 on the table, which is interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I ran out the top 500 lineups just to see what I would get, like without any randomness or any rules or anything. And that actually, the number 2 lineup in terms of projection is that lineup.
All right. Makes sense to me. I can get on board with that then. And whenever you have a lineup that projects decently well and leaves salary on the table, I really like it for these single game slates.
Yeah.
The next question is from Einstein. He wants to know, how do we feel about Horford with Miami continuously putting Time Lord in the pick and roll blender last game? So how I feel about Al Horford is that he is underowned in large field tournaments. There are not very many players in these kind of contests that are projected to play a decent amount of minutes that have almost no ownership. And that's where we are with Al Horford. Horford is projected for 18.9% ownership on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, Horford is projected for 26.5% ownership. I like being overweight to Al Horford just because he has opportunity. It's one of the more sensible ways to get contrarian on this slate. What do you make of Al Horford?
I like that call. Yeah, I was haven't given, it's a little bit of a tough click because he's a little bit expensive, but you're right. He's a player that's just not getting a ton of ownership who will play real minutes. So I think that it makes sense at his low ownership. I think it makes sense to be above the field.
All right. Yeah, we were on the same page there. Just not very many players, like I said, that are going to be playing decent minutes that are not projected for ownership. Horford is one of them. And for people bringing out that he's expensive on FanDuel, yeah, I know he's expensive on FanDuel. That's why people aren't playing. He's relatively expensive on DraftKings as well.
Yeah, he's too expensive, but that he's also too underowned.
Next question is from Zach Attack. Actually, Zach Attack, because there's a lot of A's in there. Zach Attack wants to know, on FanDuel, White and Time Lord are priced the same at 7.5K. Which way do you lean? Robert Williams, Time Lord.
Agreed. Yeah, Robert Williams he's going to project better.
And then Bossboro wants to know favorite pro play on FanDuel. Yeah, let's head over to FanDuel. I'm getting a lot of DK questions. We haven't really talked too much about FanDuel other than overall, my favorite MVP play is Jason Tatum there. I don't think there's enough of a gap between him and Jimmy Butler in terms of ownership projection. We've got Tatum project for 38.6% in the MVP. We've got Jimmy Butler at 37.2%. If they're going to be similar owned there, give me Jason Tatum, who's been the better fantasy producer over the course of the season. As far as the pro spot goes, the most popular one is Marcus Smart. And is that so the most popular one is Marcus Smart, but that's not where my ownership ended up landing. My favorite, this is not going to be all that dissimilar from what we were talking about before. My favorite pro play, who's going to be contrarian, same as when we were looking at my favorite way to be a little bit contrarian at the captain spot on DK. Time Lord, Robert Williams. There's a ceiling there. He's projected for 5.6% ownership in the pro spot. If you're going to be chalky and you're going to play Jason Tatum at the MVP, Jimmy Butler at the star spot, go and play one of these single digit owned guys like Robert Williams with a ceiling at 5.6% owned in the pro spot. That's why I'm getting to the most at pro. Is there anybody else that you are looking at our ownership projections and you think, that guy might be a little bit under owned?
On FanDuel, I think I need to go. So I'm in the boom bust tool and I'm realizing that it's 2 games. So let me pull it up.
Yeah. And the other ownership on some of these players, by the way, I'll read it off. So FanDuel, Marcus Smart is by far projected to be the most popular player in the pro spot. So I really like undercutting Marcus Smart's pro ownership, projected for 23.1. And then it's Malcolm Brogdon at 15.3. I would much rather play Malcolm Brogdon is $1,000 cheaper than Marcus Smart and is 15% on the pro spot compared to 23.1%. Al Horford is actually projected for 13% pro ownership, then Lowry at 11.5%, Bam 10.2. Everybody else is pretty contrarian. So of the rest of those players, I'm going to go with Robert Williams, and then somebody like a Jaylen Brown. I'd rather have Jaylen Brown say the star spot. It's difficult to really see too many builds where I would have him as the pro. So for me, Robert Williams is who I got the most exposure to in my lineups in the pro spot. If you have that in front of you now, Neil, are there any of these other players that are standing out to you, or do you like one of the chalk options?
I mean, I agree with you on Robert Williams for sure. I do think so. So I don't play a lot of FanDuel single game. I'm just thinking, trying to think of how I would play it if I were like hand building. I think that you could consider doing something where you're playing like a Marcus Smart in the star spot and Jaylen Brown in the pro spot. So like those are the types of lineups where you could play Jaylen Brown in the pro spot where you just flip it in terms of like projection. And that might be a way to get a little bit different in terms of duplication of the lineup. Is that something that have you been playing these single game slates on FanDuel, Greg?
I don't play them every single day where I throw
Okay.
150 lineups in them, but yeah, on occasion I do. And for me, I find one of the best 2 ways to differentiate on FanDuel and make the most sense. Number one, just leaving salary on the table. I very rarely build FanDuel lineups that don't leave salary on the table for these single game slates. The other way too is just differentiate in the pro spot. Take shots on some of these guys in the multiplier spots that have an upside and are lesser owned. Like if Robert Williams is the third highest owned or the third highest scoring player in the game, would that be totally stunning? Not really. No. Not really. So I think Robert Williams in that pro spot is a reasonable way to differentiate. And you are still saving yourself some salary at 7,500. So it's a build that I like quite a bit. Like I said, I get him more in the pro spot than any other player.
Wow. Yeah, I like that.
Wasn't there another? Oh, yeah, here it is. We got a super chat from Serious Jones. This is not silly Jones. This is not joking Jones. This is Serious Jones. This is important. Brogdon and Vincent or Brown in a 1K punt? I'll say Brown and Cody Zeller.
I really don't like the 1K. I feel like Cody Zeller lineups are going to be so overowned. So I'm going to take the other side of it just because I feel like Cody Zeller lineups are going to be way overowned in general.
Okay. Brogdon and Vincent. I like Brogdon a lot. I'm just not really getting. Is Vincent somebody you're getting to much of? We haven't really talked about him.
I'm not getting to a ton of Vincent. Let me see if I'm getting to. So I'm only playing 25 lineups. I have 4% Vincent, so I don't have a ton of Vincent. It's just that I'm trying to undercut the field on Cody Zeller, and I guess he's only 34%. I was thinking he was a little bit higher, to be honest. 34% ownership, I guess not that crazy. I feel like people playing Cody Zeller, if a Cody Zeller lineup ends up being optimal, there's a good chance that it's duplicated a ton because it's going to be people using the full salary cap who needed Cody Zeller. So I'm a little bit more inclined to go to non-Cody Zeller lineups when it's a toss-up. It was Cody Zeller, and who was the option there?
It was he didn't say Cody Zeller, but he said a 1K punt. I just threw in Cody Zeller for the purpose of the question.
Yeah,
but it was Brogdon and Vincent or Jaylen Brown and Cody Zeller. I like the Brown and Zeller side more.
I know you. It's a really tough question because I don't totally love either side of it. I'll go to the other side of it. Just I don't have a strong take just because I'm leaning against Cody Zeller a little bit in general. I'll take the other side of it.
All right, fair enough. Let's see what else we have in terms of questions. I do think there was a good amount of them that just came into Discord, and No, we actually answered most of those, but let's look at some bets because we haven't looked at bets really at all for today. And I do think there were some that were projecting well for us over in Bet Pro. So if you guys haven't checked out Bet Pro, by the way, we've got props in there for pretty much any sports book that you guys could think of. And also, if you sign up using the link we have below, you're going to get 7 days totally for free. And here's a good reason you're going to want to get it. Jordan, can you throw that graph up on the screen? I got this graph here tracking all of our results in Bet Pro and Odd Shopper if you guys started betting from the time that we released these tools. If you were betting $100 on all of our plus EV bets on Bet Pro from the start of the year, you'd be up right around $80,000. It's a pretty good deal, is it not, Neil?
I dig $80,000.
And then also Odd Shopper, you'd be up right around 60,000. But either way, both tools have been extremely profitable. And we've got the 7-day free trial available just by clicking on that link below. What I think you guys should do is take advantage of that free trial. And I think the tool is going to pay for itself. You're going to have a week. Hopefully you make some money in it. And then from there, you sign up after the free trial and the tool just pays for itself in perpetuity going forward forever and ever and ever and ever. Should be a pretty good situation. So go take advantage of that free trial and help yourself make some money. Let's see what is projecting well, because I haven't really had a chance to look at the updated lines for today. One thing that I did bet earlier in the day was Robert Williams for over 6.5 rebounds. But what's projecting well now? We've got the number one bet in Bet Pro for today is Bam Adebayo for under 9.5 rebounds. The YouTube chat, if the YouTube chat gives me shit about Bam Adebayo on an under now, because people get so upset when I'm on Bam Adebayo. Here, if I say our projections don't like Bam Adebayo, this has to make the people happy, right? Our number one projected
people
bet,
should be so happy.
They should be thrilled. Bam Adebayo was an over-under of 9.5 rebounds today. We even project for 8.9 rebounds. So we're winning 61% of the time, good for a 9% expected ROI there. So Bam, under 9.5 rebounds. Do you have this pulled up in front of you, Neil? If not, I'll find another one for the people.
Oh, you go right ahead. I did actually, hang on. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So one other one that we have that is projecting well for us, Kevin Love, under 12.5 PRA, mostly because it's a plus money bet. It's 12.5. We even projected right at 12.5 as well. But since it's plus money, we have some value there. I wouldn't be betting it if you're looking at anywhere at minus money, but at plus money, I definitely like getting to that. So top two bets for us in NBA Bet Pro right now. Bam Adebayo under 9.5 rebounds, and then Kevin Love under 12.5 PRA. Super chat right here from Cheshire Cat. Question: if I were to say sloppy slappers, what is your knee-jerk reaction?
That's no way to talk about a woman, and it's Cheshire Cat, like a Cheshire Cat grin. It's like a cartoon thing.
What would be my knee-jerk reaction? Probably you're not somebody I want to hang out with.
Right.
Mostly that would be my number one reaction, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Like you want to be out at the bar in public with somebody who's just like, hey, check out
talking
those
like
sloppy
that.
Slappers over there.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Also, the other thing I was thinking of, like, are we talking about female anatomy or male anatomy? Talking about like
those,
right? Like, who knows? Right? This guy could be at the local Y. He goes and plays a basketball game.
I've seen a lot of them in the men's room.
He sees some old guys getting undressed. Goes, boy, those are some sloppy slappers over there.
Yeah, and he says it openly. Again, I probably don't want to be talking, hanging out with him while he's saying this to the old guys. But
the absolute worst part of being in any kind of public gym, right? Like any kind of public gym, is just the shamelessness of old men.
Yes, agreed.
I get it. You're 80 years old and you don't give a shit anymore. Put a towel on.
We give a shit. We just don't want to have to walk around and just like every turn. It's like, please don't be anybody there. It's just for the sake of everybody else. With that said, when I'm 80 years old, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, I'll probably be dead by then, but we'll see. Florida Newbie Explores. He says that his grandpa had some sloppy slappers.
I bet all of ours did.
Yeah. My creepy uncle did. I don't know why he kept showing them to me, but listen, we all have different experiences growing up. We all have different experiences. But like, really, did he have to show them to me every single Thanksgiving? Like, we couldn't take one off?
Did they change it all? Like over the years? He's got to show you the progress, Greg.
Every year they hung a little bit lower and had a little bit more definition in the veins. Every year.
Yeah. So he got to show you the progress.
Yeah. Thanksgiving traditions. All right. So no more questions have come in. Let's go and talk about some of the contrarian options that we like to get overweight to. And let's look at some of the utility plays on FanDuel because it's something that we haven't really dug much into yet. But if we look at some of the ownership in the utility spot at FanDuel, there are some ways that I think we could differentiate here. We could potentially leave some salary on the table and make some different looking lineups. And one thing that is standing out to me when I'm looking at FanDuel, a lot of ownership going to Time Lord, a lot of ownership going to Gabe Vincent. Nobody else is all that popular in the utility spot. If we're looking at these players, Neil, who are priced in like the 7 to 9K range and are projected for ownership in the teens, which one of them do you view as having the most upside? So we're looking at guys like, and we'll take Robert Williams and Gabe Vincent. They're the two most popular. So let's look at Brogdon. Oh, no, not Brogdon. We'll look at Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Derek White, Kevin Love. Of those four, none of them are super popular. And it's a lot of decision points that they're going to be made here. A lot of people are going to have to be clicking on one of these to fill out their lineup. Which one do you view as being the highest upside? And to read those names again for you, it's Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Derek White, Kevin Love. Oh, sorry. I fucked up again. Not Gabe Vincent. He's too popular.
Okay.
The more contrarian ones.
It's probably Derek White for me. Kevin Love, possibly. Kevin Love doesn't have the minutes upside. I guess he does still have like fantasy production upside. If he just gets like 22 minutes, he could be absolutely great. But I think I lean toward Derek White, especially there's no like double bonus that Kevin Love could get. I think at 18.5%, Derek White, 7,500, probably has the most upside in my mind. We've got him for 22 and a half minutes. But again, it wouldn't be that shocking to see the Celtics change things up if things aren't going well early with Time Lord. So I'll go Derek White here.
It appears I've really upset our friend Cheshire Cat in the chat here because here's what happened. He's trying to troll me. No. Because I'll play the Uno card and I'll reverse it on you, my friend. Don't come out here and try to troll me with your super chats and not expect to get trolled back.
Yeah. And he says good for you, Greg. He says good for you.
Yeah, good for you too. Good for you. A nice back and forth. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I appreciate it. And for me, what was your answer there? Did you go with Derek White?
I did.
Yeah, it's going to be my guy as well. Project for 18% ownership in the utility spot over on FanDuel. We talked about how there's a good amount of variance, range of outcomes in his minutes. There's an actual ceiling there with Derek White. We haven't seen it in the last few games, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it's a very cheap price point too. So for reference, we had people asking us about Grant Williams before. Well, Grant Williams is 6K on FanDuel. Derek White is 75. You're only paying $1,500 extra. So we're talking about somebody, though, who in Derek White has a ceiling for minutes versus somebody who we legitimately don't know if they're going to play at all. Right. So give me Derek White as the contrarian option there as well. Now, here's something that I also want us to go and talk about because we're looking at some players who are under-owned that we want to be overweight to. On the flip side, though, Neil, starting with DraftKings, who is too popular to you? Do you want to be underweight to? It could be a captain play, utility play. Anybody that stands out to you is like a little bit too popular for me.
Yeah, I think Cody Zeller just a little bit too much for me at 34%. He's been playing under 10 minutes per game. I think that there are ways that the lineup ends up working out where Cody Zeller, like obviously there are ways that it could work out without Cody Zeller being in there. I think that it's less than 34% likely that Cody Zeller ends up in the winning lineup. And that's just in the util. In the captain spot, we also have Cody Zeller at, I guess, okay, just 1%. So only 35% overall. But I just think that it's less than 35% likelihood that Cody Zeller ends up in the winning lineup. So I'm going to be underweight to the field on Zeller.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And it's funny because Eric liked Cody Zeller as kind of a contrarian play in game one. And people got very, very upset at him for recommending that. But he didn't end up being optimal or anything. But, he played, he got minutes. He didn't kill you at 1K by scoring a few fantasy points. Here's why he's more popular today. People are trying to get to Jason Tatum and Jimmy Butler in the same lineup, and they're both insanely expensive. It is very, very difficult to build Tatum and Butler lineups unless they have Cody Zeller in them.
Yeah, and that exactly. But they're all going to have the exact same lineup with like those three all together, and then probably the rest are going to end up being. So that's my concern is you really don't want lineups that are going to be duplicated a crazy amount in Showdown. NBA is different than NFL. It's a tougher nut to crack for me because you got to find the right balance between like likelihood of success and duplication, which is part of the reason that I don't play as nearly as many lineups in NBA Showdown, because I'm like, I'm not 100% sold that this is like an extreme, like there's huge edge in NBA Showdown in general, because the best lineups you make in terms of projection are going to be duplicated so many times. I think that's the case with Cody Zeller. Any of like so many of my lineups, when I just crunched without any kind of rules or any kind of randomness, I got so much Cody Zeller. And I think a lot of people are going to be playing a lot of Cody Zeller as a result, because he allows you to get into good, like high projected lineups. But those are just going to be so duplicated that, yeah, I don't think it's for me.
Got a super chat in here from Luke Stone. Luke wants to know on DK, White and Lowry or Brogdon and Vincent. So one side is Derek White and Kyle Lowry. The other side is Malcolm Brogdon and Gabe Vincent. I'm going to say it depends how. So I prefer the Brogdon and Vincent side, but if your lineup is already very chalky, White and Lowry is a good way to differentiate it.
Perfectly said. Agreed.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, if your lineup, you're comfortable with the ownership in it, Brogdon and Vincent. If you need to differentiate it and mix it up a little bit, then go to the White and Lowry side. Getting into our Discord, we got a couple of questions that came in here. GG, good game 123, is saying Brown and Robinson or Bam and Love. What I'd really rather do here is just go to, here's a good way to roster Cody Zeller. Play Cody Zeller over Duncan Robinson in that lineup. And then you're just leaving a couple $1,000 of salary on the table.
Yeah, I don't hate that. The idea of leaving Cody Zeller, leaving salary on the table in your Cody Zeller lineups makes them more viable.
And then we've got Einsteinium, who has asked us, would we use Derek White as a pivot off of Time Lord in the utility on DK? It's a pretty strong leverage play. If you're trying to get away from the popularity of Robert Williams in the utility spot, you know, what's the scenario where Robert Williams doesn't play well today, doesn't have a good fantasy game? It's maybe gets in foul trouble. Maybe Derek White comes off the bench and shoots. But any scenario where the minutes start to evaporate or dissipate from Robert Williams, I think they probably go to Derek White. So, yeah, I think that makes sense to pivot because of the leverage you're getting there.
Yeah, agreed.
Nothing else. Let me double check and make sure that there are no super chats that are outstanding. And nope, because the last two were the sloppy slappers question, and then the other one that we got from Luke Stone there. So let's talk about this from a FanDuel perspective now, Neil. And by the way, I agree with you on Cody Zeller. If you guys are playing Cody Zeller at overweights to field, at least leave a bunch of salary on the table in some of those lineups. Like that's a reasonable way to differentiate from Cody Zeller. If you're just loading up on him, I do think he might be a little bit too popular in that kind of scenario. FanDuel now, as we look through some of the ownership of play, and I know it gets a little tricky with FanDuel because the ownership is so, spread out across the different, MVP, star, pro, utility. But let's look at it from this standpoint. We'll go through each tier. We'll go through MVP, star, and pro. Nobody's really popular enough in utility for me to say that they're over-owned there. But starting with MVP for me, I think Jimmy Butler is the most over-owned. And whenever I say anything negative about Jimmy Butler, people think it's like because of some incredible bias, but it's really because of this. I do not think Jason Tatum and Jimmy Butler should have the same projected MVP ownership. I would much rather get to Jimmy Butler if I'm playing one of the chalky guys. If I'm playing cash games, I recommend you guys play Jason Tatum in the MVP spot. I think Butler is a terrific star play. For MVP, though, I gravitate towards Jason Tatum. So I'm going to call Jimmy Butler the most over-owned MVP. Do you agree with that? Or is there somebody else you think is picking up too much MVP ownership?
So I thought I was going to agree with you. And then I see we actually have Jimmy Butler projected better than Jason Tatum on FanDuel, which makes me think Jason Tatum is the answer because we have him higher ownership, more expensive, and worse projection than Jimmy Butler. So I think I'd go with Jason Tatum just based on these stochastic projections. I'd have to say Jason Tatum is more over-owned than Jimmy Butler on FanDuel.
I don't have an issue with that. I'm taking the other side of it, but I mean, those are the two most popular MVPs, and it's kind of hard to say anybody else because they pick up the majority of the ownership in that spot.
Yeah.
If we talk about the stars now, there's only 4 stars that are really picking up much ownership. We've got Tatum at 19%, Jimmy Butler at 21%, Jaylen Brown at 23%, Bam Adebayo at 19.6%. For me, I am going to say the most over-owned is Bam here. The reason being is because Bam has been wildly inconsistent in the playoffs. The spots I like to roster Bam is when the field isn't on him. The spots I want to avoid Bam is on a slate where the field is on him. You're just playing with the ownerships and trying to take advantage of all of the variance in his box scores like that. So Bam Adebayo being super popular in the star spot on FanDuel, I like to be a little bit underweight to him. Do you agree with that, or is there somebody else you have your eye on?
Yeah, this is such an interesting. This is so different from contests. I've never played. I don't. No, I shouldn't say that. I have played this type of format on FanDuel. It's been a little while though. It's hard to answer like how owned should he be in the star spot in particular. I think I probably agree with you though. Like he's a little bit too high owned for a guy who's so inconsistent. Getting 20% ownership, I'd probably rather spread it among the other three.
Yeah. Boy, Cheshire Chat is still very upset. He's been sending us a lot of messages.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. He told me, he said that I was the initial person who caught a predator, and now he's calling me the predator. I don't understand it. But
yeah, well, Cheshire Cat, I think he's a little upset because he was also featured on the show. He got fooled in a really big way. So what happened is, I know her ID said that she was 21, but what happened is Cheshire Cat got tricked. She was actually 4, but she showed him an ID that said that she was 21, and it totally threw him off.
Oh,
so
no.
Now so now he's very upset at you in the chat about it.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, we did both say that we wouldn't want to hang out with him if he used the term that he asked us about. So I guess it makes sense that he'd be a little bit pissed off at us, but I don't get it.
Yeah. He was the one who left the super chat.
You asked the question.
I do wonder, well, how did he want us to? I guess he could throw this in. Cat, how did you want me to answer that question?
Right. I've never heard this term before.
There was some sort of, there was obviously some sort of answer you wanted me to give. I don't know what it was. Pro spot. If we're looking through the players in the pro, I mentioned it before. Marcus Smart in our latest run has come down a little bit in projected ownership, but still 21%. That is a lot for Marcus Smart in the pro spot. I would want to be underweight to that number, and I am underweight to it.
Seems a bit high. It's a tougher question again, because it's like, well, but we probably can't play Tatum, Butler, Brown in like all 3 of those spots. So you kind of have to go lower down the board. I don't have a strong answer here, to be honest. Probably Kyle Lowry would be my answer before Malcolm Brogdon.
By the way, the funniest guy, we have to close the show. Well, actually, there's a question to read in Discord from Miss Click Genius, who said that my D-Lo call captain last night was winning until he played himself off the floor and he didn't close the game. Yeah, for a second there, he was looking like a really good contrarian play. But here's what we're going to close with, because this is the funniest joke that anybody's thrown in chat today. Al Vision is saying Cheshire Cats.
That's not bad. That's not bad. That's
the winner for the day.
Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Al Vision in the YouTube chat. You win the chat for today. Congratulations. 1 gold star. And everybody, like the video because of Al Vision. Very good joke. We're going to back him. Like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to Al Vision for the joke of the day. Good luck with the slate tonight, guys. And also, have a great weekend. I'm going to be back here tomorrow. But if you guys aren't here on a Saturday night for 1 game slate, I understand. Enjoy your weekend.